So far in the unit, we have been looking at finding the slope from two different points, finding the slope from a graph, and now we're going to be looking at writing an equation of a line when we are given the coordinates of one point and the slope. So instead of looking at just a graph, we're going to do it numerically with the numbers and letters. Your objective and your goal for today that you are writing down should say, I will be able to write the equation of a line in point-slope form and convert it to slope-intercept form. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out in point-slope form, which is a new formula, and then once we fill in the blanks and sub in our values, we simply use our distribution and combining like terms, and we convert it into slope-intercept. That will make sense in just a few moments when we get started. Once you have your objective, feel free to move on. Here is a new formula. It is called point-slope form. The reason it is called point-slope form is because you are going to use it anytime you are given the point or the slope of a line. You'll notice right here in purple, these are the only places you're going to actually sub in values. So when you are given the coordinates of a point, x sub 1 and y sub 1, you sub them in, and when I hand you the slope, you sub it in for m. This blue y and this x that is blue, they stay. We don't change them, they stay the way they are. And just a reminder that you use a point-slope formula when you are given a point and a slope. First thing you're going to do is plug in the slope for the m, and then you will plug in the ordered pair into the x sub 1 and y sub 1. Once we have those subbed in for those three purple values, then we will simply convert to slope-intercept form. The way we will convert is we will distribute the m, because anytime we see something next to parentheses, we want to distribute. Once we have done that, we will either add or subtract whatever this y sub 1 value was, and that would leave the y by itself, and we would get y equals form. All of these steps will make sense once we put it into action. So take a moment, get all these steps written down, and then when you're ready, move on to the next slide. Now for the first example, just to get us started, the values have already been plugged in for you. The point was the 4, 2, and then the slope was 3. So things have been subbed in for you. What you're going to do now is convert it from this point-slope form into slope-intercept. Anytime something sits next to parentheses, which is why we practice this in Unit 1, we're going to distribute. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. So on the left we have y plus 2. On the right we have 3x minus 12. The only thing we have to do to get y by itself is to undo or get rid of this plus 2. Well, the opposite of plus 2 is minus 2. That is how that equals 0, and we are left with simply y equals on the left. We are almost done at this point. The question is, when I want to rewrite my minus 2 on the other side, where is its like term? Is it under the 3x or is it under the 12? I am hoping that you saw that these are both constants, just plain numbers, so these are the only two we can combine. Nothing can be combined with the 3x, so we simply rewrite it. And now when we look, we have a negative 12 and a negative 2, so we're going to add them up and keep it negative. So negative 12 and negative 2 is negative 14. Our equation is now in y equals form. We are in slope-intercept form. That's it. That's half of what our goal is for today. Take a moment, write down this second example, and then see if you can distribute the negative 5, and then take care of this minus 3. See if you can get this one all the way into y equals form. How did you do? Did you start out by distributing the negative 5, so you get negative 5x, and then remember a negative 5 times a negative 7, remember that minus 7 is a negative 7, and a negative times a negative is a positive 35. Then we want to undo or get rid of the minus 3, so we do the opposite, which is plus 3. And when I come over here to do it on the other side, it must be underneath its like term. I cannot add a 3 with a negative 5x. So once I combine negative 3 plus 3 is 0, I just have my y equals negative 5x plus 38. Once you have those two examples down and they are accurate, go ahead and move on to the next page. Now let's go ahead and put it all together. Point slope formula. The first thing I want you to do is write the formula for me. The formula says y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. The reason the sub 1s are there is that's also to remind us that's where we're subbing in. So when we go to rewrite this equation, we will have y minus, and we'll have x minus. And what I'm going to do now is sub in my information. This is the x and the y that I am going to sub in. So it's going to be y minus 4. And then what are we subbing in for the m? Here's our slope right here. It's a 3. And the formula does say x minus, but now we're subbing in a 2 for the x sub 1. So our equation in point slope form is simply y minus 4 equals 3 times x minus 2. Now we just want to convert this into slope-intercept form. This is where we do our distribution like we just practiced on the previous slide. I'm going to distribute here. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. The only thing I need to finish now is to get rid of this constant, this minus 4. I'm going to add 4 to both sides. Notice my plus 4 is underneath its like term over here. Handwriting is essential that you are lining up like terms. Negative 4 plus 4 is 0. All I have left now is my y equals. Nothing to combine with the 3x, so it stays 3x. Negative 6, positive 4. The bigger number is negative, and it is 2 bigger. So the final equation in slope-intercept form is y equals 3x minus 2. So did that make sense? Did you feel comfortable? If you're good, move on. If not, go ahead and just rewind for the last minute and rewatch. Here's our next example. See if you can keep up and do it at the pace I do. If not, not a problem. Pause it and come on back. First thing I want you to do is write your formula. Y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. Now we're going to sub in our values. We have y minus. Here's the y value. Notice it's a negative 1. So I'm going to sub in a negative 1. Be very careful that you keep the minus from the formula and you put the negative from the y value. And we'll take care of that minus a negative in just a minute. The slope that I am subbing in for m is right here, negative 3. X minus x sub 1 is right here. There's my 2. Before I continue, I'd like to simplify. Minus a negative really becomes a plus. So now we have y plus 1 equals negative 3 times x minus 2. That is point slope form. If I were to continue now to slope-intercept form, I am going to keep my y plus 1, but over on the right side I'm going to distribute. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 3 times negative 2 is a positive 6. Our final step is to isolate that y, so we must get rid of the positive 1. Well, the opposite of a positive 1 is a negative 1. So we're going to put minus 1 here and minus 1 underneath its like term over here. So now we have y equals negative 3x. 6 minus 1 is 5. There is the equation of the line in slope-intercept form. The reason we want to end up in slope-intercept form, if you remember, this is the easiest form to graph from. You would go to positive 5 on your y-line, and then you would do your slope down 3 over 1. As soon as you have that example down, feel free to move on. Okay, same exact process, except there's a fraction for the slope. Oh no. Go ahead and pause the video, see if you can get through both forms, and check yourself when you're done. Alright, so how did you do? Did you start by writing the formula like I've asked? And then did you sub in your values? Y minus, and then we sub in the 7, equals, the slope is 1/2, x minus, but then you subbed in a negative 4. So that would be minus a negative 4. Notice I changed it to plus plus. We keep change, or we just make it one big plus sign. Now, don't be scared of the 1/2 because a number times a letter is just number letter. So 1/2 x. Half times 4, half of 4 is 2. So really, there's nothing to be afraid of with the fractions. Get rid of your minus 7 so you can isolate the y. So you'd add 7 to both sides, and you end up with y equals 1/2 x plus 9. If you made any mistakes, please go back and double check yourself. This is our last example. Take a moment, see how you can do. Write your formula and see how you do with that 2/3 fraction. Of course, I go ahead and end the final example on a difficult one with a slope of 2/3, but that's okay. We subbed in y minus our -1, and minus a negative became a plus plus. So we have y plus 1 equals 2/3 times x minus 5. That is our point slope form. Now we're going to distribute that 2/3. 2/3 times x is 2/3 x. When you go to multiply 2/3 times 5, just remember you're doing numerator times numerator, top times top is 10, over the denominator 3. So that's where the 10/3 came from. Now, when I go to get rid of the plus 1 by doing minus 1, I rewrote the 1 as 3 over 3, because 3 divided by 3 is 1. That also matches the denominator. So I have a -3 over 3, and this was already -10 over 3. So now if I'm looking just to combine these two fractions right here, -10 and -3 is -13. So remember, you combine the numerators, but you keep the denominator the same. So the denominator stays 3, but when we combine the numerators, -10 and -3, it's -13. If you want to change that to a mixed number, that's fine. You would have -4 and 1/3, or -4.3. They all mean the same thing. So I'm fine with any form that you want. We should end up with y equals 2/3 x minus 13/3. If you feel comfortable with this concept, you are done with your notes for today. If not, take a moment, go back through, look how we went from point slope and then converted it to slope intercept. Can you say that you're able to write the equation of a line in point slope form and convert it to slope intercept? If you feel confident that you are good, then you are done with today's lesson. If not, feel free to go back and rewatch the video.